Okay, I think that we're rolling. Now we just gotta wait for it to roll up here, and we mute that so we don't get a bad echo. Alrighty. Cool. Alright, now I just need to pop out the chat so I can see you all better. And narrow it just a touch. Good. Okay. It's interesting. Can you guys hear me? It says here up in the window for my software that there's 130 people watching, but the YouTube software says that there's still 6 people waiting, and that's it. So that's kind of weird. I think you guys must be able to hear me. There's a little bit of lag as usual. Hello from Paris, France. Sleaford, UK. Hello from Canada, from Sweden. The Orc Warlord says yes, which I assume means that you guys can hear me. That's cool. It seems as if YouTube is just goofed up, which is fine, because YouTube still says that there's 6 people waiting to see the show, but up here in this window, which you can't really see up there, it says that there's 156 people watching, so that's something. Anyway, it must just be an issue over here on the YouTube side. That doesn't surprise me. Anyway, so I hope everybody's doing well. I've been hearing that you guys can hear me. I'm hearing that potentially I'm a bit quiet. I'm going to maybe see if I can't turn something up without causing too many troubles. Yeah, let's see. I don't know why they put the gain control on the back of this microphone. I'm not going to have to, I can't mess with it right now. That's just going to have, wow, I am really quiet. The levels are really screwy. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3, testing 1 2 3. Super professional over here. That might just, what's going on? Just a second. Can anybody hear me? I'm hoping so. Anyway, let's see here. Somebody says the audio levels are goofed. Can you guys hear me now? I've turned it up a little bit. Anything? I'm trying to remember why this is Oh, I did an interview for a podcast recently. And because of that, I think maybe I messed with the damn audio stuff. Are you guys up too loud, or is it too... I'm hearing it's better now. Okay, there we go. So good. Yeah, I did an interview with the Paint All the Minis podcast, which will be coming out soon, from what I understand. And so I had to mess with the audio levels a bit and everything like that, and go through that stuff. So yeah, it's gray today, but it's not raining anymore. It rained overnight. There was some thunder and lightning, but not too much. Let's see here. Hello from Seoul, South Korea. Shout out to the Upper Nerd Bunker. This is technically the dining room. Soon. Okay, so I'm being told by a few people it's sounding better now. I'm going to have to mess with the audio stuff and do some more testing and things like that soon. I'm going to scooch this just a touch forward. See, the thing is, currently I have my camera attached to my microphone, which at the time, the mother of, necessity, now it's just not a good idea, because if I have to move my microphone, then it makes the camera get closer to, which is not necessarily what I'm looking for. But again, baby steps, we're working on it. All right. The reason that I ended up having to put the camera on this little arm that's clamped to the microphone is because the camera stopped allowing me to zoom and pan. This is allegedly the top of the line Logitech. This is like the 922 or whatever, and I'm not super happy with it, frankly. So there we go. Hello from Istanbul, not Constantinople. London, UK, North England, Bavaria. Let me see here. Hello from Germany. There's a shout out to the robot cello case back behind me over here. It says that there's no googly eyes on it yet, but well, we've got a craft store in town. We can fix that. Jesse Daniels says there was a nice light show in Milwaukee area for the lightning and stuff last night. Yeah, I bet it was. I think it was a lot worse down there than it was up here. I saw some pictures on Instagram today, so yeah. Let me see here. Greetings from Irmo, South Carolina. There you go. First time I've caught you live. Well, glad to have you along. Excellent. Hello from Tampa, Florida, Bristol, Netherlands. All right. So I've had a bunch of people asking to see the Heldrake already, because that's kind of the subject. Now, I'll be honest. Sometimes it's hard for me to find a subject for the show, and more often than not, I'm just answering questions, which is fine. That's what really the majority of the show is about. But I frequently want a thumbnail, and I want to talk about at least something, even though I only talk about it maybe for 10, 20 minutes tops. But yeah, that's kind of, where... So because I finished last night, I'm working on 5 different pieces right now to finish out not finish out, but to get my Chaos Army to 1,500 points. So I'm working on, and I talked about this a little bit in the last live show. I'm working on the Heldrake, not the Hell Chicken or Hell Turkey, the Heldrake. I'm working on Typhus. I'm working on a Dark Apostle that I kit bashed myself because I don't like the actual real sculpt. What else? I'm working on a Fetid Bloat Drone from the new Dark Imperium set, and I'm also working on something. What's the last piece? Oh, Forge Fiend, the guy with the machine guns. He's got the 2 arms that are basically giant, autocannons. All of them are very close to being finished, but the Heldrake here is the most finished. So that's why he's on the show today. But those other ones, they'll probably show up in social media at some point. I'm sure that in 2 weeks or whatever, I'll talk about other stuff in comparison to this. But we'll see how that goes. All right, so why don't I jump into it now, and then I can show you the stuff off, and then I can answer other questions and do stuff like that. I think that would be lovely. So this guy has been put together for years. Like since the model first came out, I bought one, put him together, and I used to use him in my Chaos Army right towards the tail end of when I stopped playing 40K. And then he sat in the basement and sat in the basement and sat in the basement. I kept thinking about putting him on eBay, and I was like, well, maybe I should put him on eBay. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. And then finally, I just decided, he just sat there, and I was kind of just didn't put him on eBay. And I thought about it, but I'm like, well, I don't know. I'll just hold on to him. We'll see. Maybe they'll stop making the model, and then he'll be worth more money. So anyway, then all of a sudden 8th edition happened, and I had all this interest in playing 40K again. So I thought to myself, well, heck, I will bring him back out, and I will paint him. He's harder to paint than you would think, and I'll show you why in a little sec here right now. But for right now, let me see. This is going to be a picture. So this is what he looked like after I primed him outside. I did not use airbrush on this guy. I used rattle can. It was a gorgeous day, and I said, you know what, I should really try and do some rattle can to see what kind of cool effect I can pull off on this guy. So what you're looking at here is, this is the, what I started with, excuse me, what I started with was the dark brown Krylon camo color, which I like to use as a primer. I've talked a bunch about the Krylon camo line. There's 6 colors: black, dark brown, 2 tans, and 2 greens. And the dark brown I like to use a lot for primer, as I also like to use the black. It depends on what colors are coming next, but I very frequently like to use those 2 colors as primers if I am using rattle can outside. Excuse me. I'm just going to turn off the microphone for a second and clear my throat. All right. This is hopefully better. So, so what you're seeing here in this picture is after I went over him with the dark brown. There should have been a picture before this because he was completely super dark brown. But then I went back with a light gray rattle can paint, which was also another, just like a gray primer. And I dusted him mostly in the center. You can see, like, I hit those big panels next to the main spine area. I hit the top of his head. I tried to leave more of the brown. It's more of a dusted brown color on the wings and stuff like that. But like the shouldery bits, I don't know, shoulder pads, I don't know what you call those on a bird. And the claw parts, like where the claws would be, I left the front claws off because it makes it easier to paint. But the back claws, it wasn't necessary to take them off. So you can see I kind of like made a gradient sort of with rattle can to make that happen. And I did all that stuff. And it worked out pretty well. So this is basically where I started. When I was done priming, this is what he looked like. He was much lighter gray in the middle parts. But again, this is all dusted from above. So if you flip him over, if you would have flipped this guy over and looked at him, he would be dark brown on the underside. I didn't really bother to paint the underside at all because I just figured you're not going to see it that much. And I don't know, it reminds me a little bit of like there's a lot of airplanes, like especially fighter planes and things like that, where they're a completely different color on the underside than they are on the top side. And so, yeah, I just kind of went that way. But I went through all that stuff. I just sprayed dark brown as my initial pass, flipped him over, sprayed every last nook and cranny, let him dry for about 10-15 minutes outside. You can actually, up in the upper left corner of that picture, you can see the cardboard, or not the cardboard, the concrete of my driveway. There's like a little, the garage. And then I hit him with a light gray primer and dusted him from above, focusing mostly on the middle, the top of the head, and all that stuff to give him that sort of gradient and kind of go from there. Then, after that, what I did was I started working on the body. Here's what he looks like now. He's on the stand and everything. So what I did first on the wings, I went through and took a brown wash. So these wings were darker than the rest of the body. I went through, put a brown wash on the wings, like in amongst all the trim parts. And I just went to town with that brown wash, filled in all that part to darken the wings, which it's kind of hard to see here because of the auto exposure. But so the wings are a much darker brown than, say, the gray part here. I also decided I wanted the trim colors to be different. I wanted to go between gold and silver. So that's why I went and I put all this trim to be in a bright silver. Now, the silver that I used for this trim was... normal metallics have a tendency to be kind of chunky, and I don't like a lot of metallics. So I've been looking for a really nice, really opaque, but very, very smooth metallic recently. What I used for the silver is actually Vallejo Model Metallic Air Chrome is the color. So it's Vallejo's Model Air paint. It's designed for airbrush, and it's the Model Metallic Air, so it's a metallic airbrush color, and it's chrome, so it's a super bright silver. But it is so finely ground, and I painted that on with a brush. I didn't airbrush it. You can use airbrush paints with a brush. It will work. It's just that they're a lot more fluid more often than not because they're designed to be shot through an airbrush. So this is originally, like when I first got done with the first pass, this is pretty much one coat for the most part on the wings, the actual metal trim. It's very opaque and it's really bright. So then I went back and I did rust effects on it, which I don't think you can. I mean, you can see some rust effects down the tips of the wings there. I did some of that. We're getting a lot of reflection, obviously, because it's metallic. But I went back and sponged in some dark brown, like chocolate brown for corrosion. And then I even went back with a little bit of orange to give it like more fresh rust as opposed to like old rust. The gold here is Vallejo Old Gold, which is not an airbrush color. It's just the normal old gold. So it's a little bit chunkier. I thinned it a bit with Layman Medium from Games Workshop. And then once I got done laying down all the gold, I went over it with a sepia color. So The sepia color over the gold kind of tarnishes it, makes it look a little bit, more beat up. You can kind of see, I'm getting bad reflections again. That's hard to show metallics in this situation. You can see I've got some rust kind of effects over here, and there's rust effects over here, which you can just barely see because of all of the metallic reflection. But it works out nicely that way. My point about doing this model, though, is that there's so much of this trim, so much of this little... It took forever because of all of the trim. And I wanted the trim to look kind of beat up. So I went through and did the initial pass with both of the metallics, both the chrome color for the silver and the old gold for the gold. Then I went back and washed both of them with, I think I used... For the silver, I want to say I might have used black, a black wash, like a Null Oil or something like that. Although I might have used brown. I don't remember exactly now. I definitely used sepia on gold. That's my trick for gold, is I always make sure to use a sepia over the gold. And then I went back and did some more highlighting, but I didn't want it to be perfect highlighting. And I don't think you can see it here, but there's I tried to keep things kind of beat up. You've got some rust over here. You can kind of see. I wanted it to look kind of grungy, but not too dark necessarily. As far as the head is concerned, I've got him with the Bale Flamer because the Bale Flamer is an awesome weapon, but he's still got his tongue kind of. It's interesting. I've not really read the fluff behind him, behind the Heldrake, but you can tell. I mean, he's got a spine, which is overlit right now and not in focus, but so that I painted to be like a normal bone color. Let me see if I get my hand in there. There you go. So he's got a normal spine, which I just did in bone color and then a sepia wash and then highlighted the bone. So I'm assuming that this must have been some sort of creature at some point. You guys probably know more about the lore on this particular one than I do, but yeah. So I don't know. I'm going to take some pictures of him. You'll see him on social media, Facebook and Instagram and whatever, if you follow me there. But yeah, I liked working on him, even though it was long and tedious. But I just listened to a lot of podcasts and audiobook stuff and whatever, and it worked out pretty well. I kept the front claws off when I was painting him. I just put them on last night. I painted them separately. So, and he's got these weird exhaust ports back here. I don't know if that's his... I don't know what that is, his butt. I'm not sure exactly. But also, like I said, I just did not paint the underside, really. It's just this is the original brown underneath. Just because, like I said, on the table... I mean, he's designed to sit sort of cockeyed like this on the base. Let me try to show you. You'll notice how, if I have him evened out, you see how the base goes at an angle? That's because if the base is straight up and down, he's supposed to be turned. This is a rough camera angle. But my point is that he's supposed to always be kind of low, like he's doing a turning, strafing move. And so that's why I just didn't bother painting the underside, because I want it to be kind of darker anyway. And... I didn't want to spend too much time on this guy. I think I spent about the right amount of time on this guy, but it was fun to work on. Like I said, I'll take some better pictures. Won't be so weirdly exposed with these webcams soon, and kind of show him off a little bit more on social media. I'll put him in the Paint Showcase Club, and as I will with the rest of the guys that I did. I wanted to keep him relatively, I don't want to say monochromatic, but I didn't want to have tons of different colors on there. So there's a lot of subtleties, but it's mostly the gold trim, the silver trim, the different weathering that happens on those. Otherwise, there's a lot of grays. The bone back here is kind of a standout, and the reddish tongue, and that's pretty much about it. He otherwise is a relatively limited color palette, which I think was important. I'm really looking forward to getting him on the table because he's pretty cool, from what I understand. And we don't really have, as Chaos, we don't really have a lot of other cool flyers, or any flyers. There's a Forge World fighter thing that you can use, but I really wish there was a cool Chaos flying transport. That'd be pretty cool. I don't know what it would look like, but I'm sure it would have lots of spikes on it. So anyway, so there we go. We got him out of the way. That's our Heldrake, Hell Turkey, Hell Chicken. Something along those lines. All right. Kraken says, Heldrake is a chaos fighter possessed by a demon and mutated. Fun fact, the pilot still exists inside, but he is atrophied and full of hate. Well, that's generally the case, I think, with Chaos, is the atrophied and full of hate. But I appreciate the deal. VJ Morph says painting the trim first is going to make painting in the panels a pretty tight job. Yeah, that's why I washed all the panels and painted. I mean, I basically, with the spray, I did a lot of the heavy lifting. And again, you can do some sort of trickery with rattle can, which is what I did there. I painted them all brown, but then I dusted them in the middle with light gray to kind of give them a variant between the wings and the body. Then I washed the wings, all the in-between panels, washed all the in-between panels on his head and neck and the, main torso-y body part. And then I started doing all the trim. I thought about just dry brushing, and then just letting the chips fall where they may, but I think that would have made them look really weird. I've seen some really interesting ones online. I looked at a bunch of color schemes before I started painting and looked at a lot of different stuff. For a while, I thought I wanted him to have a very specific mark. Like I wanted him to be very Khorne or very Nurgle. And there's a part of me that still wishes that I made him like real Nurgle-y, but I would have had to done a lot more modeling. Like I would have had to cover him in all kinds of green stuff and stuff like that. But I just wanted him to be a little bit more maybe flexible, A lot of times, that's the one downside sometimes with Chaos, is that they give you the option to be able to follow these 4 different Chaos gods, plus also be undivided. So you've pretty much got 5 choices. If you're building Blood Angels, you're building Blood Angels. You've got a thing to follow. You've got a North Star to kind of focus on, and that's what you're doing with all of your stuff. With Chaos, you can hop around a lot. But then there's times when you're like, well, but this guy's now I got Mark of Nurgle, and then there's this part in the back of your head that says, yeah, but he doesn't look like he has Mark of Nurgle. You just took Mark of Nurgle because it was, useful for this particular game. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me being a little OCD on the paint, but that's kind of what I do sometimes. Let's see, what else have we got here? How would you suggest painting a model if you don't have a private place outside to use a rattle can? I'm waiting to prime some Tyranids in white. I don't have a garden or garage. Well, let's see. So you don't have a private place outside. Well, I mean, you could... One option is if it's a decent enough day, you could load up like a cardboard box in your car or something like that, or get on, basically I would tell you to go find a field, honestly, if you can. If it's not too windy, or if you can find a field maybe with a lot of trees where it would kind of give you some protection from the wind, and just, like, 'cause if you go spray in a parking lot somewhere, someone might come along and go, hey, you're getting my parking lot all dirty, which is a strange thing to say, but you'll get hassled by security sometimes, depending on where the parking lot is. But if you can find like a field or something where you're doing it, or, like people will be like, hey, you're getting paint on the grass, and you're like, well, the paint will go away eventually. And you're not really getting paint on the grass, especially if you're doing it, high up enough. It's just, no one will notice. But yeah, I don't know. That's one possibility, is that if you live in an apartment and you can't go out into the parking area or anything along those lines, you don't need to be sheltered from the wind, but it does help. If it's really windy, it's a terrible time to rattle can. To be fair, one of the problems with rattle can is that there's lots of terrible times to rattle can. Too humid, too warm, too cold, raining, just all kinds of issues. I would tell you probably, if you can swing it, let's say you live in an apartment, there are, what do you call them? There are ventilation booths that you can get on Amazon for airbrush. They cost about $100, and then they have like a hose that goes to a thing that you can close. You can close into your window, and then it's got a fan inside there and a filter, and it will blow everything outside. And then I wouldn't rattle can in one of those necessarily, but you may want to look up getting into an airbrush. I use my airbrush when I'm working on something small, or when I'm working on something that's really specific. That I need a lot of little highlighting and like stuff like that on. But if it's the other reason I use my airbrush is that it's Wisconsin, so it's cold or it's humid or whatever, so I can just prime inside. But when it's a nice day out, if it fits the project, I very frequently would prefer to just prime outside, sometimes with rattle can. I don't know, it depends. I do feel like I waste more paint with rattle can, but the Krylon camo paints that I love to use stick to plastic so well that there's so many times where I'm like, airbrush primer will stick to plastic pretty well, but not as well as Krylon. So there's times when I'm like, this thing's going to get, especially with this guy, because he's, kind of big, and I'm going to put him in foam or whatever and take him places, and all kinds of parts, the wings and stuff are going to rub against things a lot. So I think he may take a little bit more damage and a little bit more wear. So I want that primer to be as tenacious as possible and stick to the plastic as much as possible. If he was a much smaller figure that I was painting, I would not be concerned as much, because I could just put him into a bigger hole in my foam case, and then he will maybe bounce around a little bit, but he won't rub, taking him in and out of the case. This guy, he's going to be a little bit harder to get into a case, and so I want to make sure that the paint on him is as tough as possible. That's mainly the reasoning there. So yeah, I think that's my best advice on that stuff. So yeah. Adam, have you ever played Dust Tactics from Fantasy Flight? I asked because I see you had mentioned your affection for alternate World War games. Yes, Badger Wolf, I have played it. Well, I take that back. I own some Dust Tactics. I didn't like Dust Tactics, the game. It was more board gamey than miniatures game. But then Andy Chambers and Mac Martin wrote a game called Dust Warfare, also for Fantasy Flight games. And that was a full straight-on miniatures game. And that was actually a really super fun game. I really enjoyed that. And so I was buying Dust Tactics miniatures to use with Dust Warfare, which was the plan. Basically, you could use it either direction. And I did do some of that. I really did enjoy playing that game. Sadly, then everything went weird with Dust Tactics, Dust Warfare, Fantasy Flight. Now, I think Battlefront, the guys who make Flames of War, they own it. And they've changed it to Dust Battlefield or something like that. I don't know. I read the rules and I wasn't that impressed. Yeah, I don't know. I really like the models. I love the concept. I loved Dust Warfare. It was a great rule set, and I'm kind of bummed that it's not being supported anymore. I mean, I still have my books if I want to sit down and play. I've got a friend who's also got a bunch of stuff for it. I still paint things with it for it once in a great while. I haven't in a while, but I have painted some stuff that I've got sitting in the basement. The thing that was cool about Dust Tactics / Warfare was that the models came basically pre-primed, and also sort of not pre-base coated, but like the US the Allies stuff was already pre-primed in like an olive green. The Axis stuff was already pre-primed in like an Axis gray, and like Soviet stuff was already primed like a dark red. So you could use that as your base color and then paint over the top of it, or you could just completely start over if you wanted to prime and go completely different color. But it was a coating that was designed to take paint. It wasn't just like, we painted it red. It was like we primed it red because it was designed to have a nice surface, and it was a good surface to paint on. Plus, they would also put like some decals on there, kind of. So if you were careful, you could make it so that the decals would stay and you wouldn't cover them with paint, but everything else you did. And I don't know, it worked out fun. I liked that game. Let's see here. Kraken asks, did you magnetize the wings for transport? I did not. I remember building it years and years ago and thinking, I wonder if I should magnetize the wings. And I looked at it and I was like, nah, it looks really hard. And so I didn't. I know that people have, but at the time, I had tried magnetizing the wings on my Demon Prince. I've got a Demon Prince of Khorne, and I tried magnetizing his wings, and that did not work at all. So I think I was a little gun shy after attempting that shenanigans. So that's why I didn't, do any of the magnetizing on this guy's wings. What else have we got over here? Greg S. says, hey, Adam, great channel. Just discovered it. Keep up the great work. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. This is interesting. The live picture is frozen on my machine over here. You guys doing... How's it? Oh, hey, Gaddis Gaming. How's it going? How's the Bat Rep project coming along? That's a very good question. The Bat Rep project is coming along well. I've got almost... Well, let's see. I've got a ton of terrain painted. I've got, a ton is a strong term. To me, a ton of terrain is painted. So a lot of the kind of Cities of Death stuff is currently painted. in between working on these Chaos guys, like when I'm waiting for something to dry or if I just want to change gears or whatever, I just flip over and I just start working on that. And I just, it's a lot of, I'm not getting super detailed with it. I'm just kind of doing a little bit of dry brushing and stuff like that here and there. But I'm going to show some pictures of that stuff soon too. The SWA, the Shadow War Armageddon terrain is built. A bunch of it is primed, and that's my next project after that. Once I have those pieces done, I'm real close. My plan right now, originally my plan was to do my first bat rep at the end of July, but now it's going to be probably a little bit beginning of August because I'm going to an event not the last weekend of July, but at least the last Saturday of July. I'm going to an event. So yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I might even try to do a little bat rep stuff maybe while I'm at that event, but I don't know. No, I think the sound might be kind of hard. So yeah. I'm having troubles over here with this page. I hate to refresh it because it's going to screw up the chat, so I'm just going to not. All right, as long as you guys. Okay, yeah, picture here is fine. Well, that's just my machine. A Windows error, not a Windows error, a Windows thing just popped up saying, hey, do you want to update Windows right now? No, not during the show. Thanks a lot, Windows. So I don't know. That's weird. What else have we got? Picture is good. Picture is good. Video is fine. Adam, have you either done a demo or starter to get into Rune Wars miniatures from Fantasy Flight? If you have, what faction do you like now or future? If you are not interested in trying the game out, so I got a copy of the starter at Adepticon. If you got the swag bag, Fantasy Flight gave out a starter, or not the starter, but like the big, like, I don't know, was it $100, $80? The main box, the starter box. They gave those out to everybody who had a swag bag. So I got a copy back then, end of March. I have not yet opened it. I wanted to play a demo during the show, but the demo area was constantly full. There was constantly people there who probably had the same idea I did. It's like, hey, I have this game now. Someone should teach me how to play it real quick. So, I never really got a chance with that. I don't know. I've looked at a lot at the models. I like the skeletons. I think, though, that, I'm more often than not going to go towards the skeleton side anyways. I just always like kind of skeletons. That's the thing. I don't know. I just like skeletons. I've watched some bat reps of the game, and I'm not sure that it's for me. Partially it's because it's rank and flank. You're moving the guys in blocks, which I didn't like in fantasy, which is why I never got into fantasy, and I didn't really start playing anything fantasy related for the most part. Well, I mean, other than Song of Blades and Heroes. I didn't play much in the way of fantasy related because of Games Workshop's fantasy at the time, which was also rank and flank and just not my bag of chips. So anyway, yeah. So I don't know about Rune Wars, and even though like tons of people I know have it, I don't know anybody who plays it around here yet. So that's also kind of a problem. Let's see here. What's the skirmish game for 8th editions? Asks Sam. There's not currently one out there. I'm wondering if they're going to modify the kill team rules, because they modified the kill team rules for 7th edition. They had kill team rules previous in 6th edition. I don't remember if they had like kill team rules that you could buy. I don't remember if they had them for 5th edition, but I know they had them for 6th edition, and then they made an update for them for 7th edition finally. I bought the kill team rules in 6th edition on my iPad. So the upside is when 7th edition came out, I was just able to hit update on that particular file, and they gave me the new file. So I had the new 7th edition kill team rules. What I'm wondering is if they're going to do that now with 8th, or if not. I'm not sure. They are releasing, like, next week, Games Workshop is, a couple of like even smaller starter boxes. Like right now, the main Dark Imperium starter box that comes with the main rules and the whole deal, it's like $160, I think. But they're coming out with a smaller box that's $80 and an even smaller box that's $40. One's called like First Strike, and I forget what the other one's called. And so those are kind of maybe to start a little bit more of the skirmishy rules. You might want to take a look at that. But right now, I don't know that there's a kill team equivalent. I'm not sure if they're planning on kill team equivalent. And I don't know if there is Age of Sigmar Skirmish has got that little thick, thin little booklet. I don't know if they're going to do that or not for 8th edition. I think they'd be smart to do it, frankly, because I think there's a lot of people who would like to play smaller armies and kind of do it that way, but we'll see. I'm not sure. Yipsnake says, how do you make a nice leather paint with dark brown? Should I add red, orange, or a reddish skin tone? If I'm doing a leather color, I usually start with a dark chocolate brown, and then I throw a dark brown wash over it once it's dry, and then I go over with maybe like a dry brush of like a snakebite leather, kind of a more of an orangey brown color. Depends again on the leather. If you want black leather, well, that's a different story altogether. But I usually try to go with a warmer kind of dark orange brown, and then I might throw maybe like a sepia wash over that after that's dry, just to kind of give it a little bit more definition. But that's kind of how I usually do it. VJ Morph says, yeah, I think 8th will get a kill team rule set. I think that'd be really nice. I think it'd be smart to do that. So yeah, definitely. Kiss Carrie Daniel says, hey, Adam, love the show. How's the 3D printer project coming along? Not bad. I've been looking at a bunch of different pieces of a bunch of different files on Thingiverse. Thingiverse.com is a website you can go to find all kinds of 3D printer files that you can find, that you can use, stuff that people have already designed. So if you're looking for, I don't know, all kinds of stuff, there's millions and millions and millions of different files on there that you can find things for. So I've been going through and clicking like or favorite or heart or I don't know, whatever, on a bunch of them, just so I kind of, favorites that I'll come back to later and want to print. I've been working, most of my hobby time's been predominantly painting, which you couldn't see down here, painting these guys. So I haven't been doing as much of that. That being said, I'm also working with, I've got 2 videos they're not in progress, but they're being kind of thought up. I don't really write out, obviously, the scripts or anything like that ahead of time, but I'm coming up with these ideas. One video is going to be about how to get into 3D printing if you want to buy your own 3D printer and how that goes and what that all means and that kind of stuff. And I'm no expert, but I'm just going to give you my general kind of dumb guy advice of how I sort of did it and try to explain things a little bit. And then the other option is, well, what if you want to get some stuff 3D printed, but you don't want to buy a 3D printer because you don't want to get that much stuff 3D printed. You just want to get some things 3D printed. There are companies out there that do that. There's a great company called Shapeways. They were at Adepticon this year. They had a booth, so if you were there, you probably saw them. They do really good work and print out. And they have, see, the thing is, like, unless you're a rich guy, like a crazy rich person, you probably can't afford the type of machines that they have access to be able to print stuff and send to you. Like that's their deal, is they print super high-end 3D stuff. Not like super, super, super high-end 3D stuff like, like this guy here, the big hell turkey. Let me bring you back to him. He was designed in a computer, and then all the different parts were printed out on super, super, super crazy expensive machines, and then they make those for the molds, and there's a bunch of steps in there and whatever. Companies like Shapeways, they have expensive machines that are much more expensive than you and I would prefer to have, probably. And because of that, they can make some really cool stuff. If you go look at Shapeways, they also have right now, like they have a whole wargaming, I don't know if they call it wargaming or if they call it miniatures. I think they call it miniatures section. And there's people making like 40K shoulder pads for, groups that have never actually, had shoulder pads before. People are making scatter terrain. And again, it's a deal where, like Thingiverse, people upload a graphic and they put it in there. But instead of Thingiverse, where you go, okay, I'll download this graphic for free and print it myself, you can look at that graphic and go, that's really cool, I want some of that, and then pay for it. They'll print it, ship it to you, and then the person who designed the thing, they get some money, kind of like, like a lot of those t-shirt sites and sticker sites and stuff like that. So anyway. What else do we got? Gaddis says, Dust is now fully controlled by Dust Studios. They no longer have a distribution deal with Battlefront, and the latest version of the cleanup rules for Warfare and Tactics is still a great game. Okay, well, that's interesting. I did not know that Dust was no longer through Battlefront at all. I hadn't been paying a ton of attention to it, so yeah. They've also announced a new line of Chinese and Japanese army models to expand their existing model line. Well, that's cool. I really like the model line. I mean, like, I've got a couple. Let's see. Not a Soviet. There's an Axis like jet fighter that's really cool. Some of the walking tanks. Basically, for those of you that don't know about Dust is alternate history World War II. Sometime before World War One, the Axis goes to, I think, Antarctica, and they find a crashed UFO, and they bring back a bunch of the technology and start making like walking robot tanks and zombies, fighters and all kinds of stuff like that. And then of course the Allies are a bit behind and behind the eight ball, and then they're able to steal some of the technology and do things. And then the Soviets get angry at the Axis because they're not being given enough of the technology, so they go off with the Chinese and start their own thing, and it's a whole deal. So yeah, it's great models really, and it's great artwork. It's got a huge backlog, not a backlog, but a back catalog or whatever. There's a lot of really cool artwork that they've been doing. So yeah. Let's see. Wubda wub wub. Hey Adam, do you need an extractor fan and gas mask for airbrushing? I use rattle cans but want to upgrade for when I get vehicles. I would not say that you need an extractor fan. It depends on where you're doing it. Like a respirator, yeah, because you don't want to inhale those little tiny particles, those little aerosolized particles of paint, because they'll get into your lungs, and it's just not good because that's not what's supposed to be in your lungs, as it turns out. But the trick is that airbrush does not have, unless you're using like a weird enamel or something like that, if you're just using normal acrylic, there should not be any fumes. There will be particles, possibly paint floating around, but there shouldn't be any fumes. When you spray a rattle can, that smell, that's a fume, and that smell is from the propellant. So it's not the paint that you're smelling. You may be smelling the paint a little bit, but the majority of that stink is the propellant. It's the chemical inside there that basically turns to a gas when you press the button, and then it sprays out the paint. With an airbrush, if you're going, using a compressor, it's just compressed air. So there's no smell generally. So you shouldn't have to worry that much about it. Now, if you were going to do it in your dining room, let's say you're airbrushing, you would definitely want some sort of, or in your bedroom or whatever, you're going to probably want some sort of fan or something, some sort of thing to suck in the paint particles so paint particles don't fly around your domicile. Because I'm doing it in a small little room under the stairs in the basement, I'm not as concerned with the particles, because if that room gets sort of paint dusty, I can just rub it down, and it's a weird little room underneath the basement, which used to be a coal bin, I'm pretty sure, back when the house was first built in the 1920s. So it's not a clean, it's not like it's sooty anymore, but it doesn't matter as much if that room gets a little painty, whereas your living room or dining room, it probably does. So that's kind of the deal. But you don't have to worry as much about the smell with airbrush, because it's just compressed air. So, but you still want to have the respirator to keep the paint particles out of your face. Adam, what do you think about the upcoming Fallout miniatures game? I kind of expected they were going to do it sooner or later. It's a strong IP that a lot of people like, intellectual property. And, I'll take a look at the rules, I guess, but I don't know. Currently my what do you call it? My post-apocalyptic, post-collapse itch is currently being scratched, mainly by Rec Age, because I've got a bunch of models painted for that, and I'm going to be painting some more soon. So, yeah. But I think that it's interesting that they've moved into that market, but it seems like it might just be a licensed thing. You know what I mean? Like, not necessarily like, it's obviously, I don't know. I hate to say that it seems like it's more of a business decision, because, well, it obviously is. I mean, everything for the most part in this business is a business decision to some degree. Yeah. Have you heard about the Start Collecting Demons of Slaanesh on pre-order? Yeah, I saw something on the website yesterday, I think, on the Games Workshop website. I was looking for something else, and I came across it, and I saw that they were doing a Start Collecting Fire Slayers, which is the dwarves for the red, or the scary magma dwarves or whatever. They're mostly naked, those dwarves. But anyway, those guys have finally got their own starter box, which is cool. Start Collecting box, I mean. And it looks like, yeah, there's also doing one for Slaanesh. So that's cool. I don't know. My Chaos is pretty much all Nurgle and Khorne, so I've never been a big fan of the other two. I don't know why. Ralph says, if you use an airbrush with a ventilated booth that sucks everything through a filter, you don't need a mask inside. Well, yeah, that's probably true. I mean, safety first, I guess. But, yeah, if it's a good enough ventilator thingy that sucks a lot of the stuff through, then you probably don't need the mask. That's probably a good point. I could see that. Amy asks, is it not possible to do large minis by hand? It is. It's quicker to do them with an airbrush, and especially with vehicles like large, like if you were to, let's say you're playing Bolt Action, which is a 28 millimeter style game, so it's about roughly the same. The guys are around roughly the same height as, say, 40K guys, like Space Marines and Imperial Guard and stuff like that, but they're World War II guys. So therefore, the tanks for Bolt Action are, probably 6-7 inches, not including the barrel. And so they're bigger, than, say, like Flames of War, where your tanks are maybe 3 inches at best. Large flat areas, when you try to paint large flat areas with a brush, very frequently you'll see brush strokes. So what a lot of people like to do is they like to either use a spray can for something like that to give it a nice, smoother, flatter kind of finish, or an airbrush. Yeah, it's mostly, really, yeah, you can paint anything by hand, certainly. Airbrush is not a necessity. Technically, even rattle can's not. Like, there's people out there who prime with brush-on primer. You just are running a lot of times more likely to get brushstroke marks on your thing. And when you have a vehicle, but you can see the brushstrokes, that's what takes it away from looking like a tiny vehicle and looking more like a thing that somebody painted. You know what I mean? There's that visual kind of key when you're looking at something like that, and you go, oh, okay, cool, that's a thing you painted, as opposed to, oh wow, someone, like, in your brain you're like, oh wow, someone shrunk down a tiny little tank or whatever. When you see brushstrokes, it kind of takes you out of the fantasy or whatever. Bob Birdsong responds to Amy and says yes, but it's a pain in the ass. That's probably actually a shorter version of what I just said to some degree, but yeah, definitely. Yipsnake says, what do you think they will do with Slaanesh? That's a good question. I don't know. I know there was a lot of people that were, because of Age of Sigmar, so there's the 4 Chaos Gods, for those of you that aren't in on the GW stuff. There's the 4 Chaos Gods. There's Khorne, Nurgle, Tzeentch, and Slaanesh. Slaanesh has always been the sort of, like, Tzeentch is kind of the mutation kind of guy. He's the Lord of Change. Khorne is all blood for the blood god. Nurgle is all, hey, look at all these cool, great diseases I gave you. And Slaanesh is more about, like they have these demonettes, and it's about, like, pleasure and stuff like that, which is fine. But when they're trying to get into, I think, more stores, they don't want to have, like, half-naked demon ladies necessarily running around. So there was some concern, because the story of from old fantasy into new Age of Sigmar was that the gods, like, there was this huge, like, end of the world, and Slaanesh gets souls, I believe, as well, is something about that. So they were saying that Slaanesh got so many souls after the mortal realms were destroyed that he was basically sort of fat and sleepy, and now the chaos god of the rats, and I can't think of it, the Skaven god, was kind of starting to take over. So there was a lot of people that were like, oh, you guys are getting rid of Slaanesh because of all the boobs, and and they were angry about that. Well, obviously they're not, if they're making a start collecting box for Slaanesh, I guess, so that's cool. Because they haven't really made any moves in 40K to, like, put Slaanesh on the back burner. There was some concern about that. And I almost think, frankly, with Age of Sigmar, it wasn't so much about putting Slaanesh on the back burner as it was I think it was more about trying to bring the Great Horned One, I think is the Great Horned Rat is the name of the Skaven god. I think they're trying to bring that thing a little bit more forward. I'm not sure. So yeah, this camera is really, like, see, I'm like 15 frames a second over here. This is really annoying me. Yeah. If you're thinking about doing some streaming, I'd tell you to look elsewhere than the Logitech 922, FYI. So, yeah. Adam, do you know the difference between the skirmish rules for Age of Sigmar and the new Path to Glory rulebook on pre-order now? I don't. I'd heard that Path to Glory was more of a... Is it more of a campaign thing? I need to look into the Path to Glory. I keep hearing the name, but I haven't been paying as much attention to that particular thing. I do own the skirmish rules because they were like $10, and it's a nice little fun set. And I'm hoping to do some play. I haven't done any of that play recently. I've been just playing regular Age of Sigmar when I play. But I would like to try out the skirmish stuff. Like I said, I've read through the rules, and I've watched a couple of what do you call them, bat reps, I think, online. But yeah, I haven't played any of the skirmish yet, and I don't know a ton about Path to Glory. Possibly somebody else here in the chat very well possibly does. But yeah. JP Got Rocket says Slanesh is about excess, not what you just said. Well, it's sure, okay, that's fine. But yeah, I don't know that they're pulling that. I really don't think they're trying to get rid of Slanesh personally. Obviously, since they just made a new box set for the start collecting. Let's see here. Do you cover your finished models with a flat coat, satin, or gloss? I generally like to use a flat coat, flat spray varnish. I generally like to use Tester's Dull Coat. That's my favorite. I've tried a bunch of other ones, and the flattest surface, I think, is still Tester's Dull Coat. I was using some Valspar, like stuff from like, I don't know, Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that. Some, hardware store recently. They're flat spray, and it's not flat at all. I had been trying that because I thought, well, if I just spray it, my thought was if I spray it with this stuff, that'll help to cover, and then I can do a lighter layer of the Tester's Dull Coat. So the not very flat Valspar stuff will help to protect against rubbing and things like that. And then I can throw a much lighter layer of Tester's Dull Coat on there to help actually flatten the shine. And man, that Valspar stuff is no good. So yeah, that was a bad test on my part. Thank you. So just don't do that. That's me helping you by telling you don't spray garbage hardware store varnish on, and then try to cover it with good varnish as a way to cut some corners. Just throw multiple coats of the good varnish on there, which is admittedly a bit more expensive. Like for like $5, you get a tiny little spray can of Tester's Dull Coat, but it's the good stuff. So yeah. Nick says the reason your webcam goes down into frames is because of your auto white balance. If you set it up manually, you will keep higher frame rate. See, I've been messing with all of the frame rate. I've been messing with the auto stuff, and it's not like this one. The other one there, you can see the Hell Turkey, whatever. This one, I think the white balance is turned to auto, but I don't know that this one is. I'll go back and check. It was causing problems after TMX. When I took this to TMX, plugged it into my laptop, then I came home and plugged this camera back into this desktop. It was like being screwy, so I told it to refresh the settings, and then ever since then, everything's gone all just terrible. So I almost think I need to now uninstall it somehow from my PC and then reinstall it and start over, but I just haven't had any good luck with it, so yeah. JP Got Rocket says can of Dull Coat mislabeled was actually candy red. Oh, that's not cool. You do not want that, because you're going like, oh, I'm going to spray a lovely, transparent matte finish over the top of my finely painted model, and then you spray it candy red. That stinks. I don't think you could sue them, probably, but you want to. I want to. I think that's terrible. Let's see here. Someone just said Frostgrave. Frostgrave's pretty good. Peter says, did the new 8th edition make it cheaper to run an army, or is it just as expensive as like before? Well, it depends, I guess. Depends on how big of an army you want. But, I think a 2,000 point army probably cost about as much as a 2,000 point army cost before. Well, actually, maybe not. It does seem like things got more expensive points-wise, specifically transports. Like a Rhino used to cost like 35 points, and now a Rhino costs like 75 points plus weapons. So like if you were to play a 1,500 point list versus a 1,500 point list in 6th or 7th edition, I think that you'd probably now have fewer models in a 1,500 point list. That being said, I'm seeing a lot of people who are just deciding to play at 2,000 points, but that's because they've probably already got the models. You know what I mean? If you were starting out, you and a friend, and the two of you wanted to get together and play like 1,000 points, it's a very playable game at 1,000 points. Whereas in 7th edition, 1,000 points was really helpful for some armies, and some armies could not do good things at 1,000 points. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I know a lot of people who are playing, because there's two different points, for lack of a better term, in the game. There's the point level, and then there's also what they call the power level. When you're playing points in 8th edition, you are counting not only how much the unit costs, but you're actually counting all the different weapons. So you buy a unit of 5, I don't know, whatever, some sort of, dudes or whatever. And then, this person's got a laser, cannon, las cannon. This person's got a plasma pistol. So you have to pay points for each of those different things that you add to the list. When you're playing power ratings, power levels, you are just saying a unit of 5 of these things costs this many power points. Doesn't matter whether they've got missile launchers or whether they don't, or whether they've got plasma guns or whether they don't. You just pay for the power rating. So I know a lot of people who are like, starting out by just playing 50 power rating games. And, if you actually go back and count the points between the two forces, sometimes there's a decent amount of difference. Sometimes there's not. It depends. But overall, I would say if you decided that you were going to play 1,500 point games now versus 1,500 point games in 7th edition, I would say you're probably using fewer models now, which would, in theory, cost less in actual money. But if you wanted to have the same amount of guys on the table in 8th edition as you did in 7th edition, those costs have not really changed. The models still cost roughly what they used to cost. So what else have we got? Do you have any memories with playing against someone who lives in the lore of 40K or maybe any other game? I know a lot of people who really, really know the lore, obviously a lot better than I do. I've read some of the books, some of the Black Library stuff. I really like the Eisenhorn books and the Ravenor books, and I've read the Ultramarine thing, the Ultramarine Omnibus, the Space Wolf Omnibus, and a couple others. For probably 5 of the Horus Heresy books, like the earliest ones. So I don't know a ton about the lore, but I know some. And but I do talk to people who are much more knowledgeable about it than I am, and it's fun to kind of hear about all the weird sort of little nooks and crannies of the overall Imperial kind of knowledge base. Me being stupid ended up giving my Imperial Knights cannon a layer of white instead of a brush-on coat. Oh, yeah, that can be problematic as well. Can you make metallic colors from mixing primary colors? No. Metallic colors actually have little tiny actual flecks of, I think, metal, probably, in them. So that's what gives them their reflective quality. You can't take, like, blue and green and mix it together to get metallic purple, or whatever. That's not how that works. So yeah, actually blue and green wouldn't make purple anyway, but you see what I'm saying. You can't mix red and blue together and get metallic purple. You just get regular old purple. To get metallic colors, you need metallic paint. So what do you think of all the new Primaris models, like the Reavers or the floating rhinos? That repulsor rhino tank thing, that repulsor tank I think is kind of cool looking. I'm kind of a sucker for grav tanks as it is. That one I think is neat. I have to admit, from the pictures, and I'd like to see it in person eventually, but the pictures of it, it looks much more... I don't want to say it looks real, because it's a flying tank, but it looks like it has more stuff on it that is real. It has more... I don't know. It's just, like, regular rhinos don't look... I don't know. It just looks like it's got more greeblies and gadgets and things on it, which in theory makes it look real, even though when you look at a real tank, well, they still have a bunch of junk on the outside, all kinds of little ports and extra little things and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at. I think that's neat. The Reavers, I'm not sure of. They look a little skinny to me. I know they're basically kind of supposed to be like the new Scouts, but I'm not sure yet. I haven't seen them in person either, so I don't know. I need to look at their rules a little bit better, and that's the problem, is that they're not in the index. So yeah, we'll see how that goes out. Point system, in my opinion, is very uncomfortable to use. Models without war gear seem worthless waste of time. Gesundheit. The using the point system the way it is in the index right now is difficult because you constantly have to go to the back of the book and then dig around and try to figure out. It's a little bit difficult. I'm looking forward to the point where somebody finally gets a decent piece of software, whether it's Games Workshop does their own finally, or whether, I don't know, a lot of people keep talking about Battlescribe, but I just don't have great luck with them for some reason. I could look back into Army Builder, I suppose, but I haven't used Army Builder in years. So yeah, I don't know. I can see that. Don't think 40k would be anywhere near as popular if the lore was not there, according to the Orc Warlord. That's very true. There are plenty of games out there that are saying, well, there are game systems, more often than not, independent game systems that are like, hey, look, we're just giving you the rules, you make up your own lore. That's the coolest part, isn't it? And many people do like doing that kind of stuff, certainly. That being said, a lot of people really love the storylines. A lot of people really love the background. A lot of people really love the novels that come out. It was a really smart move on Games Workshop's part to make novelizations of the story so that people could read it and get engaged in it. A lot of other games have done the same thing and tried to follow in those footsteps. Dungeons & Dragons, obviously, has done tons of that. Forgotten Realms and all that jazz. Battletech did a lot of that. Shadowrun did that. I mean, a lot of different companies have made novels based off of their war game, and I think it does help people really stay engaged with the overall fluff, as we like to call it, within the system. So it works out well that way. I don't like the scouts, says Sam. They look like they're wearing a new set of sneakers. Yeah, I don't know why they painted their feet, their boots or whatever, white. They do look a little preppy. I'm not gonna lie. Like they should have like a little sweater kind of tied over their neck, and with the. But yeah, I don't know. Fessa says, Gesundheit. Can you speak German? Not anything other than that. No. It's Wisconsin. There's a lot of Germans here, and so half the time when someone sneezes, that's the word I hear. Stefan and Torch both said that they like Battlescribe. I have it on my phone, and maybe it's the difference between using it on the desktop versus using it on the phone. There have just been times when I'm trying to build a detachment, and I just have issues. I don't know what it is. I need to give it a try again, but I don't know. And then Ethan says that Battlescribe can be buggy for some people. I'm sure it's a work in progress. I mean, partially it's me being a little impatient, the game has been out for not quite a month, technically. You know what I mean? So yeah, we've got to give them some time. Flo asks, from Flowtography, that's fun. That's fun. Have you ever played a Great Unclean One? I haven't. I like Nurgle, generally. I have never quite liked the model for the Great Unclean One. Like, he's a little bit too much. Like, I like the Putrid Blight Kings. I like the Fetid Bloat Drone. The thing I generally don't like is the sort of laughing, cartoony, happy little Nurglings dancing around. I don't know what it is about those, but I don't like that style of Nurgle. I like the more kind of quiet, menacing sort of Nurgle. I don't know why, I just do. Because of that, I generally don't like the sculpt for. I don't know. I don't like the sculpt for the Great Unclean One. I don't want a big giant ball of metal or resin, like that, in the house, because it's. I don't know. I would think I would get attacked with it at some point by a home invader. I'm not sure. It's like it's just a giant hunk of pointy, gross stuff. I want somebody to make a better Great Unclean One model, and then maybe I'll think about it. But I don't know. It's a weird looking model, and I'm not a fan. I've seen some amazing ones painted up. Sam painted one up that was great. It's a great paint job, don't get me wrong, but still the model I'm not a fan. So, and I've never really even looked at the stats, so I mean maybe it's an awesome thing to have in the game, but I got to assume he's pretty expensive. I have the Nurgle Demon Prince. Him I like. I like that sculpt quite a bit, even though sadly it's fine cast. But and like his sword was all bent, but I took a heat gun to it, and that seems to have fixed it. So I've got to finish painting him up. The helmets of the Reavers look like Halloween masks. Yeah, they have that sort of like a skull thing kind of going over the bottom part of their face, but the tops of their heads are... I've never understood the concept, frankly, of a Space Marine with his helmet off. You know what I mean? I know they sometimes do it on the sergeants to make them look like they're cool or whatever, but I just... like, keep your helmet on, man. Like, you're going to get shot in the head, you know? I mean, that's just... It's just common sense. You're not supposed to take your helmet off in the real military, and granted, you're a super soldier and whatever, and it's the 41st millennium, but keep your helmet on, man. I don't know. That's me, though. Have you any advices to start Malifaux? Just buy 2 faction boxes? I don't remember if they make a starter box for it. I don't remember. They might make a starter box for Malifaux now, but they didn't for a long time. So if they don't, I would tell you to buy a couple of faction boxes that you like, you know. Like, if you want to start Malifaux just for yourself, then you, in theory, I think, could just buy 1 crew. But if you want to buy, like, 2 crews so you and an opponent can play, buy 2 crews, probably from 2 different factions, as I would tell you to do. And then you can either get the book. I think you might be able to download the rules for free, but if not, you can buy... They have, like, a very small, thin book, which is none of the fluff, but just the main rules. I think it's maybe $15 last time I looked. And then there's also a thicker book, which is still a soft cover, and it's only $40. But it's got all the fluff in the background too, which is really kind of interesting, and really good artwork and stuff like that. So, and then you just need, like, I guess technically a deck of cards. But if you're playing with an opponent, you want to have all the stuff to be able to give everything to your opponent. You also need a second deck of cards as well. So. And technically, you can use regular poker cards. You don't have to use the cards that they sell. It's just that they're a little bit more thematic, and they do sort of help in that when you're doing an attack, you've got like a weak attack, a moderate attack, or a strong attack, I believe. And the cards you buy from them will also mention what that number means. So, like, strong attacks are this, whereas moderate attacks are this range. And so having that on the cards is sort of helpful. But if you just make yourself a little note or just, actually remember it, then you could use regular poker cards or whatever. So you wouldn't even need that. Ryan says that helmets hinder the Space Wolves' natural senses. So does a bolter round in the face. So there's that. Yeah, I understand that with the Space Wolves. That's why they don't wear helmets. But if you're not a Space Wolf, but you're just a sergeant, not wearing a helmet, I don't get it. I mean, first of all, I would assume that you communicate with the rest of your squad via Vox stuff that's in your helmet. Maybe it's in your neck piece, so you don't have to be wearing the helmet. I get that too. I've just never, like, if I can help it, I never model Space Marines without a helmet. Like, unfortunately, with the Primaris that come in the new Dark Millennium box, it would be sort of difficult. I might even still give it a try, but it looks like, from what I've read, it's a little difficult to make the sergeants not, or like you'd have to basically grind away their heads and then like do a bunch of maybe some green stuff, and I don't know, I gotta look at it, but it looks a little bit more difficult to make them put regular helmeted heads in the right spot on their bodies, especially since, from what I've seen too, the sergeants, they have the helmets off, but the helmets are like clipped to their belt. So they're like, not only would I have to like grind away their normal head to put an actual helmeted head in there, but then I have to grind away the helmet attached to their belt. It's a thing that GW's got the hots for. They love the concept of a sergeant with his helmet off, and I've never liked it because I think it's just not a smart idea. I mean, we've all seen, obviously, Starship Troopers. That's how Jake Busey died. Or no, the farm guy. He died right by Jake Busey. Anyway, you guys should all go watch Starship Troopers, because it's a brilliant piece of cinema. Nick asks, do you need round bases for official Age of Sigmar tournaments, or can you use the old square ones if you already have them on it? I believe that it says in the instructions that the bases don't particularly matter, which is partially why they made all the rules in Age of Sigmar about how it was measuring from model to model and not base to base. So I don't think you need to have it on the round bases. I don't believe so. Obviously, if you're playing in some tournament, check with the TO, the tournament organizer, and find out like what the rules are. Maybe for some weird reason they do have rules about square bases versus round bases or something like that. That's possible, I guess. But in general, I don't think it's a requirement. Melanie says, "Yeah, I'm with you, Adam. Not a fan of helmetless Marines." I agree. Plus, also, it's just way harder to. It's just way harder to paint. Skin tones and stuff like that are a lot harder sometimes to paint than just like another helmet, I think. So, yeah. Magnetize helmet and head. Oh, that sounds like a big project. That might be something to do that, yeah. David Barrett says, Adam, the heads are separate from the torso. Huh, maybe I'm thinking of the press fit, the new press fit ones? I don't know. I'll take a look at that. Primaris heads are loose. You just need to find some spares to stick them on. Even with the sergeants? Oh, well, that would be helpful if it was the case, but then I'd still have to get rid of that extra helmet on his hip. So I'll have to take a look at that. I do want to build my Primaris guys, because I do want to start, after I get my Chaos to a nice point, I want to start working on an Imperial army, because I have a completely finished Storm Talon, 2 completely finished Rhinos, some finished HQ units, and at least 1 squad of either very fancily dressed Marines or Stern Guard. I don't remember which way I was planning on going. I know there's a lot of Stern Guard parts on them, but I might just have been trying to make them look really fancy. Those guys are 3/4 finished painted. But all the other stuff I mentioned is all finished painted. So I'm like, well, I might as well, make the rest of the army and go that direction. So it is my plan to take and build the Primaris guys that came in the Dark Imperium box. I just haven't gotten there on there. Jay Thomas says hard pass on Starship Troopers rewatch. It's a great movie. I'm telling you. And Michael Strickler agrees with me. We're on the same page there. Uncle Adam, if a Space Marine farts in their armor, the helmetless sergeants are privileged enough not to have to smell it. This is important. I think actually all that gets turned into energy. I think there's a tiny little methane plant or something like that. I know that there's a lot of recycling going on in those suits. So yeah. What else have we got? The noob painter says, agreed, I've got 3 or so Primaris guys who I have to paint the heads of. Lame. Yeah, see, I know. I don't mind it painting faces. I've kind of got a relatively simple tabletop quality kind of technique that I use, which I actually want to make a video about eventually. But yeah, it's sometimes it's better. Amy says that the film is better than the book of Starship Troopers, which I don't know if I agree with. I liked both, although I liked the movie a little better, but I don't really see them being a lot. There's not a lot going on between the two that are the same. There's some things, but not a lot. So I like Paul Verhoeven, who's the guy who directed it, and I like that it is a satire, basically. It's his sort of satirical sci-fi version of Triumph of the Will. There's a whole thing there, but yeah, it's satire, just like RoboCop is satire, and that's part of the reason. Uncle Adam, have you seen the newly announced Age of Sigmar starter sets? The Beastclaw Raiders one looks like it's a really good value. All of those start collecting boxes are actually a really good value, which I think, it's been a really smart move that they've done over the last year or so. Every single, to varying degrees, but every single one of those is savings. Some of them it's a lot of savings. Some of them it's maybe not as much savings. Depends on what's in the boxes and things like that and the prices. But yeah, those start collecting boxes are great. If you're interested in getting into the game and starting some collecting, start collecting boxes. That's the way to go. They're all like $85 American, and yet, like, if you and I keep talking about this one, like the Seraphon box, if you count up all the stuff that's in the Seraphon box, it retails up to $85, but then there's also a Carnosaur model in there, who I think is an $85 model by himself. So it's as if you basically got a free Carnosaur model. And of course, the Carnosaur model can be built like 2 or 3 different ways, I believe. So yeah, it's a great. I'm really glad they do those. Those are probably one of the best things for helping people get into the the Games Workshop version of the wargaming hobby are those start collecting boxes. I really think that was a smart move. Amy asks, did you like the new Alien movie? No, sadly, I did not. It suffered from, in my opinion, it suffered from the same exact problem that the Prometheus had, which is that everybody in the movie was dumb as a bag of hammers. It was just like people sticking their faces in places that they shouldn't. Like, what do you think's going to happen when you stick your face in front of a big alien egg as it opens up? Stuff's going to come out and hit you in the face. At the very least, you might get goop on you. And it might not even be like acid goop. It might just be gross. It might just be like, ugh, I got snot all over my face. Don't do that. Stand back. Get a selfie stick and see what it looks like from a distance. But do not put your face right near anything when you're on an alien planet. That's just the way it works. Don't take your helmet off. Step 1, don't take your helmet off on an alien planet. If we went to Mars and terraformed it and people had been living there for hundreds of years and I came to visit, I don't know why. Let's say I was frozen in, cryo. Anyway, I probably wouldn't take my helmet off the entire time I was there. Like, I'd be at someone's house and they'd be like, seriously, you can take your helmet off. We got the AC on. I'd be like, no, I'm good. Thanks. I'm good. No. Because I'm going to get, I don't know, a space cold or something. And then I don't, it just, yeah. The new Alien movie looked lovely. Prometheus looked lovely. Great stuff. Didn't like either of those movies because, and I'm just going to touch on this very quickly. Prometheus could have been explained very easily if, and this is not particularly a spoiler, if at some point during the movie it came up that everybody on that ship, there had been a problem while they were in cryosleep, and the cryosleep chambers got turned up, and everybody got freezer burn on their brain. And that's why everybody acted like they did throughout the entire movie. It's because they all were brain damaged from freezer burn. That would have made the movie make sense. And probably the same with the new Alien movie. But, nah, it was just, they're not, I don't understand what they're doing over there. I blame, what's his name there? Ridley Scott, I assume. I'm a big Blade Runner fan, and I'm really concerned about this new one. I don't know if it's going to be... I have a suspicion I'm not going to like it, but I'll go see it, give it a one-time chance, and then if it doesn't like it, I'll just keep watching the old one. I'm okay with it. I'm not going to start a fight about it. I'm not going to start a campaign. I'm not going to tweet at anybody. I'm just going to be like, nope, didn't like it. I'll go back and watch the old ones. I still love the majority of the old Alien movies. I still watch Alien 1 and 2, Alien and Aliens. I still even like 3, and to a much lesser degree, 4. 4 I think is a little campy and fun, but I don't know. It's just, the new one's not awesome. Kitty O'Neill says, laugh out loud at selfie stick. It's true. They just need like really, like in both Prometheus. I mean, this is not a spoiler for Prometheus. The movie should be, like they land on the planet. The first thing that they do is get out and start running around and ripping off their helmets and doing dumb junk. We sent a probe to Mars. Now, these guys are way in the future. They could send out some robots to roll around and make sure that everything's cool before they just leap out of the ship as soon as it touches down. I mean, the engines weren't even cooled off yet, and they were out running around. Just take some time. Like, real scientists, they plan, and they're cautious, and they don't just run out and start checking stuff out and licking the flora and fauna. It's just... Anyway. Frankie Lee Bailey says, hey, Martian flu is a real thing, and it's a serious problem. That's why I wouldn't take my helmet off. Exactly. Let me see here. I agree that all the characters in the new Alien movie are idiots, but it seems to be a staple in American horror. Other than that, I really enjoyed it, though. It looks lovely. I mean, that's the thing. There's so many, like, Ridley Scott, if I could, like, get him to make a movie, but I got to do all the story and make sure, but he got to do all the making it look good and cinematography, all that stuff, great. Awesome. I'm on board. Peter Pan says, I have no idea what you're talking about. I haven't been to movies since The Crystal Skull. Well, yeah, that movie will stop you that movie will make it so you stop going to movies. That's not good. You should look at some other stuff since. There have been better movies since Crystal Skull, but yeah. Are you going to make speed painting tutorials in particular? I'd like those. Yes, Harold, actually, I've got one sort of on deck as far as, like, I have the initial parts of it started, and I'm going to be doing it soon. I'm going to be doing a speed painting tutorial on Imperial Guard, a.k.a. Astra Militarum, let's say. because I've got a squad of 10 that I'm going to be using for my Shadow War Armageddon. I'm making a Imperial Guard Shadow War Armageddon warband is the term I'm looking for. And so they are built, their bases are textured, and I have done the first step of priming them, and I have stuck them onto paint sticks. And so my plan in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, is to be able to, and I won't be able to do it probably like on a normal Thursday night, which is when I usually do my normal videos, and then I put them up on Friday. I'm going to have to probably try to do it on a weekend because it's going to take longer. It's not going to be as short of a shoot as my normal videos are, because there's going to be drying time in between the steps, and that's going to make things take longer. So I'll probably have to try to do it on a Saturday, potentially maybe next Saturday. We'll see. But yeah, there's going to be a speed painting tutorial on how I'm going to very quickly get my Imperial Guard guys to tabletop quality. It's going to be along the same lines as the one that I did, the quick and easy skeleton horde. So if you go way back, maybe a year or more, I did a video about how to quickly paint a whole bunch of skeletons at once, and that's my technique for painting skeletons. I'm going to show you my technique for painting Imperial Guard, and you can follow it along directly, or you can just pull bits and pieces from it, or you can go, that's really cool, I'm going to use different colors, or whatever you want to do. I'm not saying, well, this is the only way to do it. I'm just showing you how I do it, and I hope that you are able to pull something from it and learn some stuff, and then tweak some things and go from there. What would Captain Kirk do? Well, there's a lot of things Captain Kirk would do, I'll bet. Yeah. Recently watched the Transformers movie. I'm sorry. And I had the same problem. Everyone is an idiot and all the Autobot hate is so... I saw the first of the Transformer movies, and I've never seen any of the rest of them. What I should just do is I should look around on YouTube. There's got to be like a supercuts edit of like all the coolest like special effects bits. Because I gotta say, like, the stories, from what I understand, don't make any sense, and everything is crazy in those movies, and the acting is bad, and there's just problems and problems. And if you like the movies, that's fine. I like some stuff that's probably terrible as well. There's nothing wrong. We're just differing opinions here. But in my opinion, the movies are kind of crazy, and I'm not interested in really watching them anymore. But I would like to see a lot of the special effects, like a lot of the crazy, like, and it's a lot of times like slow-mo, like robots punching robots and a bunch of stuff and parts. They do that stuff really, really well. So I would like to see like a cool supercut of all that stuff, but with all the story taken out, because it doesn't really matter. Yeah, definitely. JP Got Rocket says, Transformers last night was horrible. I kind of assumed that from the trailer. I want to say that was a trailer when we went to go see the new Alien. I think that one was in it. And we were just watching it going, so he's a knight now? Optimus Knight? What's going on? It was crazy. I don't understand. Let's see. Gaddis Gaming says, I have so much Imperial Guard to paint, it's not even funny. Well, that's kind of the trick with Imperial Guard. They do, like, multiply like rabbits. So, yeah. Namir asks, are you planning on making any terrain making videos? That would really be awesome. I haven't really planned on it, but I should look into it. Yeah, that's maybe not a bad idea, honestly. I did a video last year or earlier about MDF terrain and talked a little bit about some of that stuff, but that's about all I've really touched on terrain that I can remember. But yeah, something I do want to make a video eventually about taking stuff from the hardware store and turning it into terrain. Like you've seen like those plastic junction boxes that you like put in the wall, the electrician puts it in the wall, and there's like you put the light switch in there and stuff like that. People take those and then turn them upside down and then make them into like a little piece of terrain, like a little weird electrical building or whatever, stick a bunch of stuff on the outside because it kind of looks like a strange sci-fi building. Or sometimes even the plastic like gutters for your home, like the part where like the downspout. I've got a piece in the basement, a piece of plastic that I bought because it was at the hardware store and I saw this piece. I was like looking at gutter stuff or something and I was like, but that looks like, because it was sitting in there upside down, and I'm like, wow, that looks like a little sci-fi bunker. So I bought that. But yeah, it's not a bad idea, and I've been thinking about it definitely. Jay Thomas asks, have you played that Batman miniature game? Is it cool? Please tell me it's cool. I've not played it, so I can't tell you it's cool. I know some people play it in the southern part of Wisconsin, down near Milwaukee. I know that there's a regular group that has been playing it, and they seem to be enjoying it. But I don't know a ton about it, frankly. Some of the models do look really amazing, but yeah, I don't know a ton about it, frankly. Ismail says that I missed the Heldrake. You did. I talked about it early on. I had a lot of people asking me about it. There's a picture of it right here. This is the top, and that's the butt area, I guess. And he's got claws, and he's got a tongue. I put the Bale Flamer in there because I just think the Bale Flamer is a better weapon. But if you watch this again later on or whatever, yeah, you'll see. I talked about him a lot and everything, but that was the earlier part. Ryan says, Spider-Man was awesome. Best end credit scene yet. Yeah, I haven't seen the new Spider-Man yet. Dennis Bauer says, putting together the Nurgle Marines because they're cool. Yeah, I have not built any of the Death Guard that came in the box. I've been thinking about it, and I just haven't. I think it was because I'm like, I have a bunch of stuff. I've got a bunch of old Plague Marines that I want to use, and I really want to actually use, and I'm not moving away from Nurgle, God knows, but I do really like, I loved the Khorne Berserkers back in the day. When I first started playing Chaos in 5th, I played with the Khorne Berserkers a lot because I just really loved them running around just hacking and slashing. And then in 6th edition, they got really hard nerfed, and then 7th edition got no better. And now in 8th edition, Berserkers are kind of awesome again. So I dusted it. I didn't have to dust them off. They were in a case. But I dusted off the case. Excuse me. And I put them out there. Something went down the wrong pipe. I apologize. Oh, we do have some coffee left. Good. So anyway, yeah, so I really want to actually add more Berserkers to my army versus more Death Guard. I'm going to paint them eventually, but I just haven't yet. I don't know. I like I don't like the new sculpts for Nurgle, the Death Guard, as much as I would have hoped. Like, I really don't like the kind of wizardy guy for them. I forget what they call him. Plaguecaster or something like that. I do not like that sculpt at all. Lord of Contagion, I think that's his name. Lord of Contagion, I like that sculpt a good deal, but his stats are nowhere near as good as Typhus, and he actually costs more points than Typhus. So I'm going to go Typhus until they fix that or frequently ask questions it, but they didn't in the first FAQ. They just came out with the first FAQ for everything, including the Chaos book last week or 2 weeks ago. And I was like, okay, well, they're going to fix the points on him. And they didn't. Lord of Contagion, they're on the same page in the index. You've got Typhus and Lord of Contagion. I might have talked about this 2 weeks ago. They're right next to each other, so it's very easily to visually compare. You look at Typhus, you look at what's his name. You look at Typhus, you look at what's his name. And he's just, the Lord of Contagion is just nowhere good as Typhus. Typhus is a psyker, the other guy's not. Typhus has got a range weapon, the other guy doesn't. Typhus is the one that gives buffs to Poxwalkers, whereas the Lord of Contagion doesn't, and he came in the box with the Poxwalkers. It doesn't make any sense. And yet, Typhus is like 30 points less. So, yeah, not doing that. Dennis says, thou art not a true follower of Nurgle. I think I might have a cold, so I don't know. Kitty O'Neill says, no, it's not Kitty. I'm sorry. It's Kilty. It's small. Kilty O'Neill says, uh-oh, Adam left his helmet off and caught the flu. The Martian flu. That's not good. I think you can expect points adjustment in the Codex, really. That's probably true. I kind of assumed they were going to adjust the points between those two guys, between Typhus and the Lord of Contagion. I assumed that would happen in the FAQ, and it hasn't. So maybe they'll do another FAQ like in a month or less, and maybe it'll be fixed in there. Or something. I don't know, but it's not. Will Slaanesh be getting the good old Zanuary update? Like, what is in store for the Slaanesh players in the future? I've got no clue. We were talking a little bit earlier. There was the new Start Collecting Slaanesh, but I don't know anything else about what's coming out that way, so yeah. Skunkbot says, the Lord of Contagion costing was on the list of questions sent for the first FAQ, and they didn't change it, which suggests it's intended. Maybe they don't want people to spam it. Well, that's true, I guess. The one downside to Typhus is that he's a named character, so there can only be one of him on the board, whereas technically you could have multiple Lord of Contagions because they're not a named character. I guess. I don't know why you would, but yeah, that's potentially the case. Ryan Gates says, I found both armies in the 8th edition starter are very lackluster, but it will probably change with codexes. I'm assuming you're meaning as far as like rules and stuff are concerned. I like the Fetid Bloke Drone both rules wise, and the model I think is amazing, which is why I'm painting him as well. He's part of what's being added to my 1500 point Chaos army. He's the only piece from that box right now. Like I was thinking about adding in some of the Poxwalkers, but then I was like, well, maybe down the road. But for right now, like when I saw that model, that Bloat Drone, I was like, yep, he's got to go in there. So he's going into my list. He's really close. I wanted to show you, well, his base is nowhere near done. I'm not 100% sure. He's a great model, and he's kind of like dragging along these little, there's like a bunch of hoses and stuff hanging off of him and then like dragging along the ground, and that's what actually supports the model up off the base instead of, say, like a flying stand, like a clear flying stand, which is great. It's a great looking model. Kind of like the Cairn Wraith for Age of Sigmar is like that kind of ghosty looking guy, and like his robe is just the only thing touching the ground, and that's what supports the model. It makes him look like he's floating. I have not completely figured out how I'm going to paint those hoses. There's a bunch of different, like there's some like rigid hoses. There's other ones that aren't. And I'm still trying to figure out my color scheme on kind of that. I think the rigid hoses I'm going to do mostly black and then do some dry brushing and then some dirt, obviously towards the bottom because it's dragging around on the ground. But I need to figure out what the smooth ones are going to be like. But that model is very close to being finished. I'm pretty close on him. Like I said, all of them are really pretty close, but it was really only the Heldrake here that was completely finished last night when I decided to stop painting. So, yeah, that was the last model that I had finished last night, or the first model that I finished last night, and the other ones are, like I said, Typhus is really close. I think I just need to finish his base and then paint the rim around the base. I might need to touch up his axe, or not axe, he's got a scythe. I need to touch up his scythe a little bit. Man Reaper, I believe is what it's called. Yeah, and then the Bloat Drone is 5/6 finished, and my Dark Apostle, his base needs a bunch of work, but most of the rest of him is done. So, what else have we got? Lord of Contagion may end up with loads of war gear in the decks. Well, maybe, I suppose, although he's not molded or modeled with anything. Like, he doesn't have a pistol or anything. You could just, like, obviously just glue a pistol to his hip. He doesn't have to have the pistol in his hand to say that he's pistol if you're into the whole WYSIWYG thing. But, yeah, I mean, maybe they'll make another kit. Maybe, like, he's kind of like they did with the Hellbrute in the Dark Vengeance box. So, like, the last starter for, or was it 6th? Yeah, 6th edition starter was Dark Vengeance. I don't think they made a 7th edition starter, did they? I don't anyway, so the Dark Vengeance box came with a Hellbrute, and he was sort of like, which is basically Chaos's version of a Dreadnought. But he's like in a very dynamic pose, and he's got a twin-linked multi-melta, I think, over here, and like a claw over here. Well, when they did eventually make an actual kit you could buy with lots of different weapons, he wasn't as dynamically posed. But then you had missile launchers and twin link las cannons and all kinds of, and Reaper autocannons and all kinds of other options to put on there. So maybe they'll do the same thing with the Lord of Contagion. There's maybe the Lord of Contagion that comes in the starter box, and then maybe like next year they'll come out with a Lord of Contagion kit where he's much more multi-pose, much more customizable. You can add in all kinds of different weapons and junk like that. Maybe that's what they'll do. That'd be kind of cool, actually. And that would kind of coincide to some degree, I suppose, with the maybe when the new Chaos Codex comes out, which they say that most of the codices, whatever. I like to say codexes because it's fun. Most of them are supposed to be out, I believe, by Christmas, or at least the majority of them are supposed to be out by Christmas. So that'll be interesting to see. Sebastian says, hi, Adam. I know you like both Nurgle and Beastman. Have you seen the old Pestigore models? I really wish GW would start selling them again. Pestigore or Bestigore? I think I've seen Bestigore. I've heard the name Bestigore, but I don't know about Pestigore. I haven't seen those. I should do a look for them. Sounds kind of interesting. J.E. Granberg asks, when making demonstration armies, do you think it's better to have symmetrical armies or asymmetrical armies? Also, any thoughts on handling growing rule complexity when teaching a game? Those are very good questions. I think that when you are building two armies that you are going to be using to teach a game, let's say it's a skirmish game, I can totally see that being asymmetrical is a good idea, because then you give your opponent the better army, because you, who already understand how the game works, then have a lesser army, and then it's more likely that your opponent will win, which they will enjoy and maybe think well of the game. If the first time you ever played a specific game, if someone's teaching you a game and you're like, yeah, that's cool, let's learn, I want to learn how to play this game, you're going to teach me, and the guy's like, yeah, cool, and then that person just steps on your neck and completely destroys you, you're not going to play that game anymore, most likely. You're going to be like, well, that was dumb. The guy is a jerk. I don't like these people, or whatever. You're going to have a bad time. So, if more often than not, if you're at least given a pretty good fight, or I don't want to say allowed to win, but if it's easier for you to win, it's probably just going to leave a better taste in your mouth overall. So, yeah. Now, if the other option is if it's a situation where you want to say to the opponent, which models do you like better, or which storyline, you give them the choice and go, I like this, or I like this, or whatever, great, then maybe do that, and then it would be best to make them symmetrical, so like if they don't accidentally pick the underpowered list or something like that. I have forgotten the second question because my memory is garbage. Oh yeah, also any thoughts on handling growing rule complexity when teaching a game? I think it's baby steps. I think you start just like Games Workshop did that with 8th edition now. There's the basic core rules, but then there's the advanced rules where you add on more stuff, like more terrain things and all that kind of junk, and you don't have to really think about those or mess with those early on. And then as you start playing more, potentially you would start playing with the more terrain rules and all the other stuff. So I think that makes sense. If the rule system allows for it, try to have a simplified, start with simple rules, the core rules, and then move into the more advanced stuff. If the rules don't have those differentiations, make your own. Say, well, there's this rule, but we're not going to really mess with it for now. We're just going to use this simplified version that I just made up, and then do that. I would probably go that direction. Hey, Adam, what do you think of the Grimkin from Privateer Press? I don't know a ton about them, other than the fact that a lot of people have been saying, hey, they look like Malifaux guys. So I don't know really anything. I've also read that they have been in the fluff, or mentioned in the fluff, for quite some time. So it's not like they just decided, hey, let's rip off Malifaux. I don't believe. I don't know a ton about it because I don't know a ton about Privateer Press stuff, but I do know that a lot of the talk is that they do seem very Malifaux-ish. Someone asks, hey, you don't base your flight stands? Yeah, so let me go to the right camera here. So this guy does not have anything. Normally, I'm a huge fan of basing, putting basing material and all kinds of junk, and then painting up your bases. This guy's just got the black plastic stand. I think for now I'm going to do that. I think it's because there's two reasons. One is real and one is less real. One of the less real reason is that, well, I want to focus more on the model and less on the table. You know what I mean? So the fact that he's just like got a little, it's almost like a shadow, like that black circle down there. It's almost just like a shadow down, as he's flying low over the ground. Maybe the more real answer is I dumbly already glued the base to the clear plasticky thing, and my technique normally for basing is to use CA glue and then baking soda. CA glue, as it will dry, will give off fumes, and it will turn this clear plastic thing into a foggy white plastic thing, which I don't want. So I need to, if I want to base it later on, I'm going to have to use a different glue, probably plastic cement, maybe PA or PVA glue, but I kind of hate PVA glue because it doesn't stick to plastic as well as I would like. So that's really the more real answer, is that I dumbly glued this on years ago, and then, I don't know. But to some degree, I do like the concept of focusing a bit more on the flyer and a bit less on the base. So now if he was like on the ground going to take off and he wasn't like a flying thing or something like that, I would absolutely do the base, because I'm always a big fan of actual basing. But the whole with a flyer, I kind of want the focus to be elsewhere. Plus it also made it quicker. So there's that too. Stu asks, when is the next Irregulars show, please? Okay, so the Irregulars, Uncle Adam's Irregulars, are I have a Patreon page. It's patreon.com/tabletopminions. And people come there and support the channel, and so that I can hopefully either get a new webcam or figure out how to better fix that one, which it technically won't take any money. But yeah, I bought new lighting. I'm buying new equipment. I'm going to more events. Going to be going to Gen Con soon, middle of August. So it's about a month away. It's amazing. Anyway, in the Patreon, there are 3 levels. There's a $1 a month level, a $2 a month level, and then the $4 a month level. The $4 a month level people are known as Uncle Adams or regulars. And I do a live show once a month just for them. So it's one of these types of shows, but only they can see it. And it always happens on the Saturday. You need a bit of a Aztec calendar to figure this out. It always happens on the Saturday that's closest to the 20th of the month. I don't know how exactly I got to that decision, but I think I had done the first couple of them and then was noticed that there was a pattern, so I've decided to stick to it. So, that all being said, noon Central Time next week, next Saturday, the 22nd, I believe, that's when the next irregular show is going to be. So, if you want to be there for that, then you should sign up at the Uncle Adams Irregulars level on Patreon, and then you'll be able to be at that show. It's basically like this. It's frequently a little shorter. It's usually like an hour and a half, but it's also, instead of 416 people right now, it's usually 25 to 30 people. So it's a little bit easier to have more of a direct conversation. The chat's not flying by as quickly and stuff like that. So anyway, that's the answer to that question. Thank you very much. So, Craig says you could use PVA around the stem and CA for the rest. Yeah, I've thought about that too. I might. I've thought about that. Again, referring back to the Heldrake there and the base. Yeah, I don't know. I could maybe just use spackle too. Just try something totally different. I don't think spackle gives off any fumes that would, affect the clear part. Maybe I'll do that. I don't know. Right now, I'm not. The other thing too is that I also have, besides having this vehicle, besides having this guy, I also have a Storm Talon for my Imperial Army, and this is actually, I think, this is not the Storm Talon's base. But I don't know what happened to the base for the Storm Talon. I believe I used the black plastic part for the Storm Talon on a different model. So I need to either buy another base for the Storm Talon, or I can just swap between this base and go between the Storm Talon and the Heldrake when I play, because I'm probably not going to play them both at the same time, because one's in a Chaos Army and one's in an Imperial Army. And then if I base one to be one way, and then it isn't going to work when I switch back and forth, kind of, you see what I'm saying? So anyway, that's where I'm at right now. Yes. Mark says, just say you're too lazy to base it. It works for me. I love basing. I really do. And when you guys see the Forge Fiend, honestly, the Forge Fiend's base is not as good as I would like. There's cork on there, and the cork is a little too corky looking, but it was an older base that I did probably 5 years ago. So at the time, it's not as great as I would like, but it's not bad. I'm going to put some little tufts, after I've varnished it with Tester's Dull Coat. I'm going to go back and put some of those little grass tufts here and there, which I don't do on a lot of my Chaos models, but this one's big enough that I'm going to do a little bit of kind of dead grass tufting, and we'll see how that works out. But so maybe I can hide some of the corkiness. And when I say corkiness, I don't mean quirkiness, I mean cork, like flat pieces of cork. I put some flat cork on the base here and there, and a lot of times cork will look like cork unless you actually do extra stuff to it, and I tried to, but I didn't. Like I said, it was a little older of a model. I would say that one of the bases that I'm probably most proud of right now, which isn't done being painted yet, but eventually I'm going to have a Plague Claw catapult for my Skaven Chaos Age of Sigmar army. There's a video about Uncle Adam's pro tips about basing, I think, if you go back about a year or so ago, and you'll see some pictures of that base, and I'm really looking forward to painting that someday and all that stuff. But that's a base that I'm pretty proud of. I love basing, and I always kind of I don't understand it. That video where I'm talking about basing, what I'm talking about is put your texture on before you prime, because then you prime everything, and then that primer helps to save, the basing as well as save the model. I see tons of people who do this, and it's just difference of opinion, and that's fine, but I see tons of people who do it on the Paint Showcase Club where they completely paint the model and the base is completely bare plastic. And then they're going to go and they're like, well, I'll do the basing later. A lot of times you don't, which, laziness, I understand that totally as well. But also B, now you've got to do all the basing stuff, and my fear is always that I'm going to end up gluing basing material to my painted model, which is going to bum me out. If I end up gluing basing material to my unpainted model before I've even primed it, I can go back and try to sand it off. Like if I've glued some sand onto the guy's knee by accident because I was clumsy, I can try to get rid of it before I start priming and all that stuff. If I've glued sand to a painted knee, I'm going to be really bummed about that because I don't want to have to go back and try to sand it off because I'm going to repaint the knee and it's a whole thing. So that's why I always do all the basing material generally before I paint. Anyway, that was a long thing that was sort of silly. Lucas asks, can you do a tutorial on how you base? Yeah, I think so. Eventually, that's kind of the... Well, yeah. So the main way that I like to base is to use baking soda and CA glue. Those of you I've talked before about the baking soda technique. I started to do a video about the baking soda technique, and I glued the base to my finger during the video, which caused some swearing and unhappiness. And then I eventually peeled it away from my finger, and then I set it on the table, and I was trying to clean the glue off my finger, and then I glued it to the table. So I didn't make that video. I saved the footage, and it will be in the blooper reel at the end of the real video once I actually get that video done. But I have to sit down and actually do the video. The trick is that a lot of the tutorial videos take a lot more work just because there's like drying time in between and like the second camera thing. The second camera thing I think I have solved now. This is going to be sort of technical for a second. The trick is that to make sure that you guys can see what I'm doing and that I can see what I'm doing in the second camera, I need a monitor so like when I'm filming a normal video downstairs in the basement in the nerd bunker, the camera has one of those little screens that flips out. So I can see myself. It's almost like a little selfie screen, but it pops out, it rotates around. So I can see that I'm in the shot. And then when I do this, I can see where my hands are and all that kind of stuff. So that's important. But I don't have like a full-blown regular monitor on the camera. I just use a little one that's on the side, and it works fine. But when I have a second camera that's going to be filming, so I'm holding a model. I got a model over here. Okay, so I'm holding a model, and I need to be able to show you what's going on here. I need a camera that's up there, shooting down over my shoulder to show you this. The problem is that if I want to see, am I in the shot? Where is it in the camera? Is it over here? Is it over there? That kind of stuff. Right now you can see I'm looking down here at the screen to see where it's at. Well, if I just put the camera over my shoulder to see if I'm in the shot, I'd have to turn and look at the little monitor that's on the side of the camera. That's very difficult. So what you do is you run an HDMI wire to an external monitor, and then you put that right in front, and I clamp it to the front of the table. So I just look down at that, and then I can see if this camera can see the thing. The new cameras that I bought, which I have not yet quite deployed because of this very issue, they're great cameras. I like them a lot. They're going to be clearer than what I'm shooting with now, currently down in the basement. I'm going to probably start shooting in 1080 instead of right now shooting in 1080 and downsampling to 720. Again, this is all video nerd stuff that most of you are probably glazing over and don't care about, but that's fine. Long story short, with those cameras, when I start recording, they stop sending out signal to the HDMI, so I can't see what I'm doing. So I have fixed that problem by buying an external monitor / recorder. So instead of recording on the camera, it's going to record on the monitor. So since I'm not hitting record on the camera, it won't stop sending the signal. I just got that thing last week. So more tutorials are coming because I've now finally solved the technical issue, which shouldn't really be an issue, but it's an issue. There we go. Dorn asks, any tips for gluing a painted mini to a painted base? Always heard paint to paint is a weak connection. Paint to paint is a weak connection. Number one, don't paint the undersides of the feet unless you have to. Like if it's a model that's like stepping, like maybe paint this foot, but this foot that's like dead on the ground, don't paint the underside of it. That helps. But you're probably going to paint the base. What I do if I'm going to be putting a model onto a base where I'm doing them separately, I drill holes into the feet of the model, and I glue, it's called pinning, and I glue paper clips up inside there. So I take a piece of paper clip, glue it up into the little tiny hole that I've made, clip it off, give myself 1/4 of an inch of metal, basically pin, sticking out of the bottom of the feet, and then I paint them separately. I'll take that guy and I'll put him onto a cork, and then I will paint the base separately. And then when the time comes, I take my same pin vise that I use to drill the hole for the pin in the feet, and I kind of figure out where I want him to go, and I drill a hole in the base, and then I glue him there. So now you've got, admittedly, plastic, because you haven't painted the underside of the foot, to glue, or to paint, which is not great. But if you figure out where the paint is going to get covered, and if you scrape it up a bit with an X-Acto or whatever, and then also the glue and also the pin, then you're in a much better place. You don't have to worry as much about your model separating from the base. So you've got that going. Yeah. Richter Scale Studios says, I have a piece of terrain that had that cork look problem. A quick mix of PVA and wood filler, thinly spread and airbrush touch-up, problem solved. Yeah, what I did is when I picked the model up again, the Forge Fiend model up again, I just basically, one of the ways that I help to get rid of the cork look is I just actually put CA glue over everything. It kind of soaks in. The problem is that it's still, like the surfaces aren't so bad. It's just more along the edges where I sort of tore the cork. Yeah, it's hard to say. It's not as good as I would like, frankly. So hopefully soon, like in the next models, everything I've done since then has been better as far as the cork is concerned. But back then I was just like, oh, I've got some cork tile. I'll stick it down here. That'll make it look cool. And it's not as good as I would like, but it's not bad. Again, it's not for show. It's not for competition. It's so I can have a Forge Fiend on the tabletop to hopefully smite thine enemies. Poor Man Wargaming. Hey, Adam, have you tried using something like a Grelin Earth or Martian whatever, the name of the orange crackle paint over cork? It's how I do Chaos Fungus on my Death Guard bases, actually. And when I'll show you guys eventually once it's done, the Forge Fiend. That base, so like I said, I did that base on that model a long time ago. 5 years ago, probably. So all I did was glue cork and like one piece of slate to it, and a busted like chaos icon that I kind of, so it looked like it was half buried, but I didn't texture the rest of the base like that. There was just bare plastic kind of along the lines of like this stuff. So what I did was I painted where I had bare plastic, I painted it with a black brush-on primer from Reaper, I think it's a Reaper Master Series black brush-on primer in like a little squeeze bottle. So I painted that all over that the black part of the base, because I then went and took the crackle paint stuff and painted over it in the flat areas. So on this model, there's the raised parts that are cork, but then the parts in between that are not are now like dried earth crackle paint stuff. And I don't generally do that stuff last step, which is kind of what they want you to do. They want you to use, say, the Martian stuff or the red stuff or the brown stuff or whatever, and paint that on at the very end. Because then the red color does the thing that you want and the crackle paint does the thing that you want. I don't like to do that because it's very fragile. I find that when you use that stuff, that crackle paint, and then you don't cover it with primer and maybe a layer of wash and a bunch of other stuff, it brushes off easily sometimes. Even if you do paint underneath it first, it still can brush off kind of easily. So that's why I usually like to paint over the crackle paint. It lessens the effect a little bit, but not so bad. Like I said, I'll show you guys some pictures and stuff once that's all finished, but it's close. Yeah, so that's the other thing I've done. And that crackle paint stuff is cool, but like I said, I almost always use it underneath the primer. I don't use it at the last step. I usually use it before I even get to painting. So Adam, your quick and easy painting skeletons is the best. I laugh every time when you are swearing and your brush drops on the floor. Well, yeah, that happens. I'm sometimes a bit clumsy with that stuff. Generally, it's exacerbated by the fact that I don't keep my painting area very pristinely clean. I don't keep everything. I'm not an organized... I generally know where things are, so it's not that I'm disorganized, but I'm not like, I need to have my entire area, clean and spotless, and then I will start painting. My stuff is always just, my table is completely covered in junk, and that's just part of I don't know. It's part of the way my brain works. It's maybe a creativity thing, or it's my creativity thing. Other people can be creative with a clean desk. I don't seem to be able to. I don't know what it is. So yeah, that's the problem. Then is that if from time to time paint things fall off of the desk because there's so much junk, or I set the brush down and that, whatever. But yeah, I liked that demo, and I like that thing about painting skeletons, and I want to do more of those, which is why the next quick and easy one is going to be about Imperial Guard. Again, I'll probably be doing, when I do those quick and easy ones, it's going to be probably more about horde type armies. I would like to eventually do one about Tyranids, like Gene Stealers or something, because again, you need to paint a whole bunch of those. Like if you were doing, there's no reason I don't think to do a real quick and easy about, say, Grey Knights, because your Grey Knights army should be pretty small, because Grey Knights are really expensive and there's not a lot of them. But Orcs, Tyranids, Skeletons, Skaven, all those, you need a lot of them. Imperial Guard, definitely. Surreal asks, to seal or not to seal? A bunch of you have answered that question, and the question is, if you're going to be playing with it, it's best to seal it. If you are a display painter, if you're somebody who's painting something for a competition, and I'm not, so I've just been told this. I'm not saying I've done it, I'm saying I've just been told this. Most display painters don't seal their stuff because it's not going to get hopefully rubbed on by things too much, because it's like they want the overall texture and surface and shine or lack thereof. They want what they get when they're done. They don't then also want to spray over it with something, because they don't need to protect it as much, because it should be in a nice case where it's not touching anything. Whereas you and I, when we're painting stuff to be played with, we're throwing it in our case, which is, soft foam, hard foam, maybe it's a milk box, who knows, whatever, I had a friend who used to bring over his orcs in egg containers. You pop them open and there'd be a bunch of orcs inside egg containers, and that worked fine for him. But you need to seal that stuff if you're going to play with it and touch it a lot. And if you're not going to touch it a lot and not play with it, like it's for demonstration, for competition, then yeah, you generally don't seal it. Dennis says, I always misplace my tools. See, that's the thing. I always know where stuff is, mostly. At least on my gaming table, it's just, I'm like, I know where it is. Like, it's over here amongst all this junk, and then I have to go over there and pick it up, and maybe I knock something else over because I got too much crap on my table. But that just seems to be the way my brain works. My desk at work is also kind of messy, but I always know where everything is. I mean, it's not terrible. I've tried to get rid of as much paper as possible, and because I work in an industry that's mostly digital, that's fine. But I've still got Post-it notes in a lot of different places. So, when using Crackle texture paint, could I use a layer of PVA glue over it to help fix the cracks in place? I feel as if the PVA glue would probably fill in a lot of the cracks and get rid of some of your texture, and that would may bum you out. I would try it on an empty base just for grins and see what you think. One of the ways that I find that fixes the stuff the best is that if you paint underneath first, you've got a plastic base, if you paint something else on it, just whatever color, just black paint or primer paint or whatever, you just paint something else and then paint the Crackle paint over the top of it. The Crackle paint then can stick to the paint underneath. I have found the worst, when the Crackle paint flakes away the most, it's because I've painted Crackle paint directly to plastic, because that Crackle paint stuff does not stick to plastic. Most paints don't stick to plastic that easily, but because there's so much surface area, you've got a big chunk of paint, and it's wide and it's got more surface area, so it's more likely to stick to the paint. The problem with Crackle paint is that it has less, surface area, because each piece kind of separates and is only being held on by a little kind of part where it's touching. That's the trick. So you need to generally, I find, paint underneath, paint the base first, just with a flat color or whatever, then do the Crackle paint over it. That'll help. After that, I usually have a tendency to spray prime over it, and then, I do a little bit of painting on it, and then I do a little bit of maybe even wash, stuff like that. That all kind of helps to add in there too. Sometimes it takes away a little bit of the extra stuff that crackling happens, but that's the thing. The Crackle paint stuff, again, works great for display, but it's not hardy. It doesn't, it can't take a lot of wear and tear. So Sturmhawk asks, "Hey Adam, what do you think of the new Shadespire skeletons due to be released later this year?" I want them. I want them. I want them now. The models that they showed off, I don't know, 3 months ago or whatever, looked amazing, and I really do. I really am looking forward to new skeletons, and those look really great sculpts. So I definitely want to paint those when the time comes. Even though I'm still on the fence a little bit about Shadespire, like I need to play it more. The demo that I had was like it was cool, but I don't know. And so I want to play more and find out. But even if it's something I completely dislike, which I kind of doubt, I don't know. If it's something that I still just need those models, just to paint and have around, even if I don't use them in, say, Age of Sigmar or whatever. But I probably would use them in Age of Sigmar maybe if I can. But yeah, they're very, very super cool. So anyway, it is 11 a.m. my time. So that's pretty much it for today's show. I want to thank everybody who was here to see the big Hell Turkey, and I hope that you enjoyed the fruits of my stupid labor. There's a lot of trim on that guy. There's a whole bunch, and I'll be showing you some more stuff soon as well. But I may focus more on the Paint Showcase Club or Instagram and Facebook and that stuff for those other guys as they get finished. I'm not 100% sure. I'm probably not going to focus on one of those guys next time for the show. I'll focus on something else most likely. But anyway, I hope that everybody's having a rest of the day will be good for you people, and I appreciate going through the technical difficulties. I'm going to try to figure out my audio issue because it is a little quiet. It's not too bad, but I'm gonna go back and listen to this later, and then check it out and try to figure out what's going on with the mic a little bit, try to figure out what's going on with the camera a little bit. We're getting there. But anyway, I hope you guys had have a good rest of your day or night or whatever's going on in your neck of the woods, and we'll see you next time.